What's up everybody, this is Danny, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the Nokia X. And this is a very weird phone because this is the first Android handset from Nokia. If you didn't know, Nokia is owned by Microsoft, so this is kind of a weird move. This phone has been in the rumor mill for a very long time, and they finally decided to release it with the Nokia X, the Nokia XL, and the Nokia X Plus. When you look at the specs, it's not very impressive. It's got a 4-inch WVGA IPS display, 1 GHz dual-core Snapdragon processor, 3G, and it also has a 3-megapixel camera. So this phone is meant to be for emerging markets and for prepaid, and it's not available in the US, but you can get it unlocked for about $150 or so, about 89 euros. So it depends on where you are in different parts of the world. Let's see what comes inside of the box, and you can pull out the Nokia X right here, and a sticker says your fast lane to Android apps, and it is running Android, but it's a very forked version of Android, and I will show you that later on. There's the 4-inch display there, and this is the white version. It comes in multiple colors, but they're replaceable backplates, so make sure you get the color that you want. Besides the phone, you get a packet for Nokia Care, which gives you the information that you need if you need support from Nokia. And here is some documentation on the Nokia X if you need to reference it at all. It also comes with some cool looking red headphones, but I'm pretty much betting that these headphones aren't very good because of the cost of the device, but I will let you know in the full review if they're actually worth anything. And here is the micro USB and power brick all in one. And you also get the 1500 milliamp replaceable battery, so that's pretty nice that you can replace the battery. To install this battery, you're going to need to pop the back plate off, and the best way is to actually flip the device upside down. There's a little notch there that you can pull that off with, and it's pretty easy. It comes back all in one piece, and when you pull it off, it will expose the dual SIM capabilities of this phone. For GSM, it runs on 900 MHz and 2100 MHz 3G. The micro SD card slot, which is very needed because it only has 4 GB of internal storage. So let's go ahead and pop this battery in, pop this back cover on, and now we are ready to go. So let's go ahead and turn on this device with the power button on the right hand side. There is a screen protector on here, so let's peel that off. And here is the startup sequence. It's a little bit different than the other Android phones, so I wanted to include this. But right now, let's take a quick hardware tour of the Nokia X. On the right hand side, there are some fat volume rocker and power switches. These are huge buttons, by the way. And there is a micro USB on the bottom, and on the opposite side, there's absolutely nothing. And up top is the 3.5mm headphone jack. And on the back of the device, there is a single speaker, the Nokia logo, and then up top is the 3-megapixel camera with no LED flash. And the back is a nice polycarbonate matte finish. There is the 4-inch IPS WVGA display. Yes, WVGA, that is 480 by 800. It's been a long time since I've seen that low resolution on a device. And on the bottom is the single capacitive back button for navigation, and that is it. So this is definitely not your typical Android device. The display is not as bad as you would think it would be. Yes, the low resolution, you can really see the pixelation, especially on the text, but the actual colors and the viewing angles are pretty good. And up top, you can see the dual SIM configuration. You can actually switch in between them by tapping the icons, but they do want you to use the SIM card 1 slot for data connectivity. The corners are not super sharp, but you can definitely feel them in the hand. They are rounded a bit, so they don't dig into you like, let's say, the Lumia 920 did. But the back is still a nice polycarbonate matte finish, so it does feel fairly premium in the hand. And when it is in the hand, it does feel pretty solid. Now here it is next to the Lumia 520, or this is the 521. It's the same variant, but this is the US T-Mobile version. And you can see how much shorter the Nokia X is in comparison. And the back of the 520 or 521 has some rounded edges, so I think it feels a little bit better in the hand. It feels a little bit more blunt, and it feels thicker in the hand because it's not rounded. When you unlock the screen and go into the launcher, you'll notice that this is not your typical Android device because it actually looks like Windows Phone 8 with this tau interface. And Nokia claimed that they're going to use this device to push you towards Microsoft services and towards Windows Phone 8. Now, that doesn't make any sense because this phone is running Android. Yeah, I will never get that statement, and I don't think I ever will. But anyway, you can resize the tiles here just like in Windows Phone 8 and move them around. But if you look at the UI itself and the fluidity of it and the animations, they're actually pretty slow. And I think that has to do with the internals of this device. It has a Cortex A5 based Snapdragon dual-core processor and 512 megabytes of RAM and the Adreno 203 graphics. That is pretty old when it comes to specs, especially when you compare it to something like the Moto G. The interface, to be honest, is a little bit weird. You swipe down and you go into the search, and the keyboard is pretty tight on there, and it's not the most comfortable keyboard, and it's very hard to replace these things, and I'll show you why. But the email, store, internet, it actually comes preloaded with Twitter and Facebook and Skype and Nokia Music. It actually has Astro File Manager, which is great because you can sideload different Android APKs on here, so that is kind of a savior here. And you have here maps and some of the other core functionality of the Windows Phone 8 devices actually. And it comes with a whole bunch of bloatware games, and you have to uninstall those because they are taking up a lot of space, because remember, you don't have a lot of space on this device for apps or for your pictures or anything. So thank God for that SD card expansion. This is what your lock screen looks like when you have notifications. You can swipe to the left to get rid of them, and if you swipe right, you will actually just unlock the phone. But here is the store, the Nokia store, that also comes preloaded with. And if you look here, you don't have a whole lot of choices for apps. And this is what's bothersome about this device, is that it does not have Google services. So you can't install YouTube, you can't use Gmail, and that doesn't make any sense. This is an Android device, and you cannot use Google services on here. Now, you can root this device to get it, and I will be doing that, and I will show you that in a later video. But out of the box, this thing is just terrible when it comes to app selection. And look at the storage space here that you're looking at. I mean, 1.29 gigs of total space. I mean, that's really small, and so you're gonna have to uninstall a lot of those things, and you cannot just install whatever you want on here. But thank God for that SD card expansion, so you can at least take your pictures and put some other things on the SD card. There are also a few other stores that are preloaded as well, so you can get more apps that way. But there is the dual SIM configuration right there. I am running this on T-Mobile right now, and for some reason it's running Edge only. And I've also put in an AT&T SIM card, and it's running Edge only. So let me know if there is a way around this, because I've tried to change a lot of things. I still cannot get 3G in the United States with this device. Multitasking is also a no-go on the Nokia X. Fast lane's the closest thing you'll get, and I'll show you that later. It just kind of shows you what you've been recently running. Here are some notifications that you can kind of tweak a little bit. And when you go into developer options though, that looks just like typical Android. You actually have USB debugging and all that other stuff that you would get. So rooting is definitely possible, and I've actually seen a lot of videos on how to do that. So I'll definitely root this device and try to get this thing as stock as possible and get all of this mess off of here. But it is running Android 4.1, which doesn't make any sense either, because if it was running Jelly Bean, I'm pretty sure that this device would be running much faster, since it has smaller specification levels to run Android 4.4. So with 512 megabytes of RAM, it actually would probably run pretty quick. But here is that fast lane that you can see. It just shows you what's recent on there. You cannot multitask on here, so you actually have to download probably a multitasking switcher, which there is one that I've seen, but you have to get that through a separate store, and there's no way to kill apps on here either, which is weird. So you're gonna have to get something like a task killer. So it's like a workaround. You have to work so hard to get this device to work the way you want it to. It just doesn't make any sense. I mean, this is like a phone from 2008. Like maybe one of the first Android devices that you had to work so hard to get to, and it just doesn't make sense. Maybe you can sense just a little bit of frustration in my voice in this video, but I think for the average user, this is very confusing, because for you to run 2 or 3 separate app stores to get what you want, you can't install YouTube, and you can't use Gmail, and you can't do the things that you would do on a regular Android device. It's just very frustrating. I just wish they would have released this with stock Android 4.4. It would have been much, much better. Gaming on the Nokia X is actually not as bad as I thought it would be. Normal, typical games like this runs just fine, actually. It runs way better than I thought it would have. But in the full review, I'm going to run some graphically intensive games such as Dead Trigger 2 and see how it runs. So make sure you stay tuned to the channel for that. And, you know, the really big limiting thing is the actual storage, where you can install these large files. Let's look at the camera interface real quick, and there is a 3 megapixel camera on the back. And the actual interface itself is not bad, very simplified, and actually when you look at the settings themselves, there's a lot of choices here. ISO changes, noise reduction, saturation, contrast, sharpness, picture size, quality, color effects. There's kind of a lot of stuff here for such a low-end camera, and the exposure can be changed on the fly here. So I really commend Nokia for that, because the actual camera software looks pretty good. You can actually change your white balance too. Now the shutter speed is not the fastest, but it works. And the image quality though, it's not that great, and I think you would expect that from a 3 megapixel camera. So I will give you more samples and images and video, because it only takes 480p video, does not take HD video. So I will show you that in the full review. For a WVGA display though, it's not as bad as you would think it would be. If you actually look at the colors here on Marquez's M8 video, it's not that bad at all. The colors are pretty good. Actually, the viewing angles are pretty nice as well. And the brightness output is actually pretty good for a display of this caliber. So, really, if you're used to at least 720p and above, then yes, you're gonna be disappointed. But, looking at this display, it's not as bad as I would have imagined it to be. I'm actually very curious, what do you guys think about this Nokia X and this platform moving forward for Nokia and Microsoft? Is this the last Android device that we'll ever see? This is definitely an experiment for Nokia, and I know that I had some frustrations when I booted this device up. So would you be frustrated if you had to go through some of this stuff to just get the apps and things that you want and get the functionality out of this device? I'm probably going to get flamed for it, because there's going to be a lot of people that are going to say, well, it's easily rootable, it's so easy to get Google services on here, and you can put a stock launcher on it and everything like that. But I'm looking at it from an average consumer perspective. I think it's confusing for the actual consumer itself, and I think it's very weird that it's advertised as Android, but then it's not really Android. Alright, ran over. Let me know what you want to see in the full review, any kind of test. Follow me on Twitter at SuperScientific and let me know the requests there. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel so you don't miss any more videos like this one, and I will see you guys in the next video.